welcome to episode 444 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans' weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and listeners, maybe you've noticed that we've had a couple Zelda episodes in a row of Retro Encounter, and we're going to continue that trend today. We are in the middle of Zelda month, and in doing so, talking about one of the most beloved, most influential Zelda games, and you know, one of the more retro Zelda games, because this is only the third one. It's The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo, and with me I have two other Link to the Past veterans, Jonathan Logan.
Hello, everyone.
And Joshua Lindquist.
Hey, folks.
So, JL, we are here to talk about a certain LJ, Link Jr., because A Link to the Past was an early Super Nintendo game, 1991. It was originally in development for the NES, so it had a bit of a longer development time than most other Super Nintendo games. It was developed for a full megabyte cartridge instead of a half meg cartridge, so it has roughly double the SNES disk space of, say, a Mario World. I think it made a pretty big splash when it first released. I don't really remember the zeitgeist of the time because I was really not in a video game playing age when this game came out, or maybe I had a game. I think maybe I had played like Friends NESs or something by 1991, but I've always known this as a super beloved, immediately in the canon Super Nintendo game. So what's our personal backgrounds with Link to the Past? When did you first encounter it? What did you first feel of it? Try to transport yourself back 20 plus years. Who'd ever like to go first?
20 plus years, 30 plus years at this point.
I was being generous just in case. I don't read your diaries.
I appreciate just entering my 30s, but no, unfortunately, that's not true. Yeah, I can go first. My history with this game is pretty much parallel with my history of the Super Nintendo system. I remember very early on when the SNES came out, my parents rented a SNES for me because in those days you could actually rent a system from, whatever. Abercrombie Video didn't exist yet. This was, I think it might have been Pioneer Video. It was one of the video stores in New Glasgow because there was like 10 of them because it was the early 90s.
Mine was Errol's Video in Springfield, Virginia, which is definitely not around anymore.
I'm sure they had a fine business while it was there. Yeah, so I got it, and I played Mario with it, and I love Super Mario World, and then I got my own Super Nintendo, and I don't remember, my parents must have bought it for me, and one of the games that was purchased with it was Link to the Past, and I have very strong memories of playing the first 5 minutes of it, and the rain effects blowing my mind, because I had never seen anything like that in a video game before, and this was the first kind of social, you play video games with your friends and you go over to their place and you play NES, but this was the first video game I had where at the time my parents put me in swim classes for reasons that I honestly can, apparently they didn't want me to drown. I didn't drown, but otherwise the swim classes did not go well. However, pre-swim classes and post-swim classes, all that we could talk about was The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and talking about the game, and talking about discoveries and where we were and secrets. And I found this, and talking about everything in this massive, massive world. And today I could play the game with my eyes closed. I know where all the items are. I know I could, I could not do a dark room blindfolded, but I could play through it pretty easy, and I have. But back in those days, it was a mysterious, monstrous game. There was just so much of it. And it really did become one of my favorite games I've ever played on the Super Nintendo. Not just because it's a brilliant game, but because it was the first immersive game I had on the system. And I really treasure it for that. I love this game so much.
All right, Joshua, same question. What is your early memories of A Link to the Past? How did you first encounter it?
So my story is a little bit similar to Jono's. So I did not get any video games until Christmas 1994, and it was a Super Nintendo. Did not come with Zelda. I had Donkey Kong and Mario. But a few months later, at a pawn shop of all places, my brother and I each got to pick out a game, and I picked out Zelda. So it was actually the first game I ever like picked out at a store. I had learned about it from a babysitter who had played it when we were over there one time. Uh, and it also was kind of a social experience for us because we would get stuck and we would go ask the babysitter for help, wanting to know how to solve it. I remember we specifically got stuck even at the very beginning. Not couldn't even get in the castle, um, and she drew a little map for us of where to find the bush. Right. Um, so I had all that, but yeah, it was the game that really got me into video games. I can very clearly say that like I'm only on the podcast today because of it. Like it's the game that got me into games. It's my favorite game of all time. Like just still, I play it at least once every year. Um, this is my second playthrough this year already. um, so I usually play it right at the beginning of the year. It just kind of resets my gaming year and makes me disappointed in everything else that comes out.
Given how the importance of Zelda in your life, I kind of picture when the pawn shop owner hands you the game, you actually do the do 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 do.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I remembered that moment better than I do.
I think that's true for so many defining moments of our lives, where they just become stories that we tell ourselves rather than actual memories.
Right? It's like, and you don't realize how important it is in the moment. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, but I still have that copy from that day, and I do remember going, and we got Star Fox the same day too. So,
That was
um,
what your brother picked the same day?
yes, he picked out Star
Got it.
Fox.
Hey, those are two winners, I would say.
Right. It's
Yeah.
like our first 5 video games, pretty great. Two Mario's, Donkey Kong, Zelda, and Star Fox.
No pit fighters in there.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember my first 5 Super Nintendo games. There's definitely a pattern, but I'll go into my version of the story. It's not that different from either of yours. For me, I've always gotten video game systems late. I think the first time I got a game system like within a year or two of it coming out was the Switch. Because I'm usually waiting for sales or waiting for a library to build up because like one thing I always say is like I don't want a new system unless I know there's games I want on it. But this is before those attitudes had settled in. In the early '90s, I would play video games at my neighbor's house, mostly the NES. I got an NES and a Game Boy for myself in the somewhere in the 91 to 93 range. But I was definitely playing Super Nintendos at friends' houses by that time. So I was definitely aware of games like Mario World and A Link to the Past when all I had at home was an NES and a Game Boy. And my favorite Game Boy game in those early days, and still one of my favorite Game Boy games, was Link's Awakening. And so I had I had Zelda 1 and Link's Awakening at home. I had rented Zelda 2 many times. I knew I really, really liked Zelda. And I played Link to the Past at friends' houses a little bit, but never like all the way through. Maybe just seeing one dungeon here or there. So I didn't know all the nooks and crannies of the game, but I definitely knew I wanted to play it. So I got a Super Nintendo. I don't remember the exact year. It was probably 95 or 96. And the first game I got for it was Mega Man X because I knew I wanted the Super Nintendo Mega Man. And I think I got maybe one more game after Mega Man X, but for Christmas that year, I remember my parents telling me, "Hey, Santa will only get you 2 video games this year. So if you give Santa a list, then with a bunch of video games, you're only gonna get 2. So just make a list of ones you want, and we'll see which 2 that you get." And so that Christmas, which I think was probably December 1996, the 2 games I got under my Christmas tree were A Link to the Past and Chrono Trigger, which is maybe the best video game Christmas I've ever had.
That's a
uh,
pretty. Those are some pretty good things under the tree.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty good. So like I don't know exactly my first 5 Super Nintendo games, but 3 of them were Mega Man X, Zelda, and Chrono Trigger, and those are 3 of my 4 favorite Super Nintendo games. Full stop. So from the beginning, I knew I wanted to play this because I already liked Zelda. I loved Link's Awakening. I had played this at friends' houses a little bit. When I played it for the first time myself, I sort of knew what I was getting into, and I don't remember really struggling it with that much. But whenever I was confused or something, I would talk to 2 of my friends ironically named Jay and Jason. More Jays on this podcast. That's so weird. Two different guys, Jay and Jason, who had played this game. Who I counted this as one of their favorite games. Yeah, I remember them telling me how to get into Misery Mire, the sixth dungeon in part 2 of the game, and how to find the flute. And just tidbits here and there, but I played this game mostly by myself, mostly without internet, and it really did feel like this is so much bigger, so much cooler, so much better than Zelda on the NES and Game Boy. I do not play it as often as Josh does, but I remember playing this or replaying this in 2018 when I was just replaying a bunch of Zelda games in a row. I was trying to beat, I think, like 8 Zelda games in one year, which is about maybe half a normal year for Josh. Uh, and and I played it then on the SNES Classic, if memory serves. But this time I am replaying it as on the Switch Online Family Plan, which is very very convenient. But so I've played this game many times, but I think it's been 5 or 6 years, and it's as good as I remember. Like even it's all very familiar. Like Jono, I basically know where everything is, or if I don't remember the layout of a dungeon, it immediately feels familiar and I'm able to get through it without issue. I mean, you can sort of see the intentionality in the design and sort of realize like, oh, so many games were influenced by this game. This is non-linear action RPG elements, discoverability, mystery, some moments of surprising dread. Like it's a little alarming how much damage you take at the beginning of the beginning of part 2 of this game to sort of just communicate how harsh that second world is. Although we won't get into that in this part of the podcast. And there's just a lot of cool designs, uh just absolutely fabulous gameplay that holds up, and tremendous feelings associated with A Link to the Past. I mean, I don't think this is that shocking to listeners, but there will not be a lot of broad criticism on this episode.
Probably not. No, there might be in the second part. There might be some minor complaints about the not even the difficulty of puzzles, just like some places where it's like finding the fire rod, for example. Like that does require you to like go on a trip around to an area that you know.
Yeah, there's a few things.
I mean, it's not to like Link to the Past randomizer levels of where the hell is that item, but there are a few times where it's like, geez,
This game will have annoyances and frustrations in it, but generally speaking, I mean, this game is universally acknowledged as an all-time classic, and I
yeah,
don't think we're going to be bucking that opinion at all. Because I mean, if anything, I'm just reminded of like, oh, they put that here because they're trying to gently nudge us towards this part of the map. Just I'm just noticing more and more minor things like that as I'm playing it. With geez, 33 years of context. Oh God. Um, I mean, it's held up. It's held up beautifully. I've only done the first, oh, I don't know, 5 dungeons, depending on whether you count certain half dungeons as full ones or not. But this is not going to be a challenge to finish in time for part 2 because I'm just excited to play more. I'm probably going to play more of this within 30 minutes of us ending the recording. Is there anything about the early game of A Link to the Past that you find specifically memorable? Is there something in the first couple dungeons or in the opening moments of the game that just immediately were familiar to you? With Jono, it might be that rain,
it's the
because
rain.
the
Yeah.
rain at the beginning is a pretty impressive video game effect, but both from a visual and a sound perspective. Is there anything else that just really just strikes you as like, oh damn, this thing is special?
It's not just the rain though. In the opening moments of the game, it's the soundtrack, the songs. It's just this incredible feeling of dread that's overcoming you as you are outside in the rain exploring. And then the second you enter into Hyrule Castle, and the Hyrule Castle theme kicks in, and it's so grand and vaguely at that point in the game oppressive. Like it's just overwhelming that you're just like this kid with a friggin' little sword, and you're surrounded. It's creates an entire. I think the opening section of this game is just a masterpiece of telling a story in a video game through environment and gameplay without a whole lot of talking. Actually, there's a bit obviously, but there's not a ton of dialogue. It's just entirely told through the feels of what you're going through at that time. The open, I think it's a genius opening sequence in this game. I think it's probably one of my favorite openings of a video game ever. It's just so
Yeah, that opening song is kind of stressful. Just like
yeah.
Hmm.
the sort of this the staccato strings, and there it's going up and up and up. It's communicating that you're in danger. Your uncle dies in front of you, perhaps 5 minutes in. I think it's a bit of a dark, stressful opening few minutes.
Yeah, for sure. I was gonna add, like, I love the like little world building and just like you realizing that this place is bigger than you think it is, because of the secrets, right? Like the original Zelda had the bushes hiding caves, right? And they kind of start with that right off the bat. But I love how you can just kind of explore around the castle, even going up on the castle walls. And then there's like the gate that you open later with the Master Sword, but it's like, well, what's that? And like I remember when I was younger, desperately trying to figure out a way to get past it.
Mm.
Feeling like there just had to be some secret there that you had to find. But even a little later, like realizing that the world is a little more complex than you think because you push that ornamental shelf, right? That just reveals a whole nother area, which maybe is something we would just take as, of course, it's a video game. Of course, there's a secret door behind a big shelf or something. But back then, and especially as a kid, it before we had 3D graphics even, it was a huge moment to find that and just see that it's all connected, um, and just a bigger world than you thought.
It's interesting that you mentioned the bushes because I'm really trying to cast my mind back to what it was like to play this game for the very first time with only the knowledge of I played very little of Adventure of Link. I'd played a lot of Legend of Zelda. Uh, so I'm trying to cast my mind back to what it was like playing this for the first time as a 7-year old. And one of the things that you said, it's the bushes because in Legend of Zelda, yeah, there are hidden passages under bushes,
Not
but
just hidden
like
passages. At least two of the main dungeons are just
Yeah.
behind random bushes that you
yeah,
have to hit with the candle or the rod.
exactly.
There's intentionality here. Like I never beat The Legend of Zelda 1 as a child. I think I beat that
Oh
game for
yeah.
the first time
Hmm.
in not kidding. I think it was 2022. Just a couple of years ago, I was thinking, you know what? I should just beat a bunch of classic video games that I've never gotten around to before. So I beat like Zelda 1 and Mario 2 and Mega Man 3 for the first time all the last couple of years. But like those bushes in Zelda 1, I never discovered as a kid. But this bush in the first 5 minutes of A Link to the Past, it's like I mean, the place you can explore is a little bit limited at the time, even though the castle is huge and intimidating. But there's sort of a little garden path, and one of the bushes kind of has a stone inset around it. So it's like the game is communicating to you, hey, there's something here. This bush is different from the other bushes, and then they'll do that in ways like just how things are positioned, or maybe they'll be at the end of a path. This is one of the originating games of jump into every well, walk into every waterfall.
Oh,
Because
totally.
yeah, I know that I know there are wells in the first couple Dragon Quest games. People don't at me, but but like a lot of things that we just think of as natural video game instincts of explore the empty space, look for doors that where the map is still dark, things like that are really just so clearly designed in this game. I think this was either formative or at least crystallize all of those video game attitudes and instincts into one game that just felt so ahead of its time.
Well, true, but like in the original Legend of Zelda, bushes were yeah, there were the bushes you could, burn down to reveal entrances to dungeons. But generally speaking, they were barriers that you could not pass to delineate each screen. But in this game, it's I am trying to remember what it was like, and I think it was mind-blowing to realize I can change the environment. I can pick up the bushes and throw the bushes. Like these are not barriers anymore. I can just get rid of them. And
they wanted a system for burning grass and bushes in this game and having fires spread, but they were not able to implement it in time. That kind of thing would come many, many years later. But like those are the kind of things that they were trying out in this game because this was an unprecedented level of memory space and design space that they had for a video game. Because again, this was a double sized cartridge compared to Mario World, which was I think the same year or less than a year earlier.
Yeah, and I mean, I mean, this was the beginning of the Amanda and I joke about Link, and Link's the hero of Hyrule, and we just joke he's the gardener of Hyrule, because it's almost impossible if you see a patch of grass not to cut the patch of grass, and this is the game that's kind of responsible for those, like, ooh, gotta clear all the bushes, gotta cut all
Right,
the
you got to cut
grass.
all of them, and then the
Yeah,
guard comes out and kills you. Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, it's like I love that we know now that the developers were being very ambitious at the time, right? The thing we're about being able to burn bushes and seeing fire spread, that they wanted to do that 30 years ago, right? That like they kind of half realized it for a moment in Four Swords Adventures, but it really wasn't until like Breath of the Wild, right, that they really just let you set the world on fire. But it's like they waited 30 years to finally make that design intent come true,
Mhm.
and I just think that's brilliant.
I know this is not the Legend of Zelda, but for me, the watch things burn video game will probably always be Far Cry 3.
Mhm.
Because in the level where they give you a flamethrower to sort of explore the fire physics, you're burning down a field of drug crops from a crime lord, and you start to slowly get high on the fumes as you're burning them down, and then a reggae song starts to play. Far Cry 3 is insane. Um, this game had so much ambition, and even though they scaled back on those ambitions eventually, which is I think probably the story of every video game in development ever, the final product has so little wasted space and so many fun things to discover that it's an impressive package even 33 years after the fact. But they also throw you into the action pretty fast. I mean, your uncle leaves your house. You follow where your uncle went. You find a secret passage into the well of the castle. You hear a communication from Princess Zelda. You pass by your uncle's corpse and borrow his sword and shield. You go through a sort of a half dungeon at the base of the castle, rescue Zelda, and escape through a hidden passageway in the throne room of the castle, which Josh alluded to earlier. And from then on, you have there's some limitations, like some Metroidvania style barriers, like you can't get to certain caves or rooms until you have a means for getting across gaps or lifting boulders, things like that. But it does not take very long for you to be dropped into a large version of Hyrule with the Zelda overture playing. And and just wandering around even before going into your first dungeon, you can get into all kinds of crazy stuff, like find magic bottles. I think you can get the I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think you can get the ice rod before finishing the Eastern Palace. Yeah. If you're a little savage, but like there's just a huge volume of things to do and explore before the first real dungeon of the game. It doesn't have the true dropping you into a non-linear Hyrule that Zelda 1 is. It's you They do sort of guide your progress in a way. You have to do the Eastern Palace first, for example, but there's surprising amounts of non-linearity and discoverability for being a Super Nintendo game. Was there a part 1 secret that you remember either being surprised by the first time you played or just being impressed by the placement by playing it in 2024? For me, it might be the ice rod because that's an optional item that is so cool and so powerful. But you can technically get it before even the first dungeon of the game. It's whatever. I think the fire rod and ice rod are just cool items in general, but it's kind of wild to me you can get the ice rod so early.
I was gonna say, like, I agree. The ice rod's probably the highlight, right? If Sahasrara tells you to go look for it after the first dungeon, but you can just go down there. But it's like if you really go hunting, like I love that you can get an entire heart container. There's actually 6 pieces of heart you can get before the Eastern Palace. I usually only bother with 4. but I love that you can just do that, right? And that you can go to the first dungeon feeling very equipped with bombs and 2 bottles, and you can stick fairies in those bottles, and you've got an extra heart. So like you're already at 5 hearts by the time you're in the first real dungeon. And I love that the world is just that open to let you do that, when it really didn't have to be.
Mm. I think my favorite secret in the game, even though the reward is not overwhelming, it's the finding the hobo under the bridge
Oh
and being
yeah,
like, "Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
god, you can go under the bridge!"
magic
Mhm.
bottle number 3. That's right.
Yeah, and it's that's mind blowing that you could just be like, "This, like, how would that occur to you?" And you know, go under there, and you're like, "Oh my god!" The screen dissolves, it picks up back underneath the bridge. It's so cool. It's just such a I don't even know if I call it a secret because it can come about through just exploration. But that was a really cool moment in the early point of the game.
And you know, mentioning bottles, this in this one, this is the first Zelda game that had bottles of this nature. I mean, there were potions and some semblance of healing items even in Zelda 1, but the fact that there's 4 empty bottles in the game, and you can fill them with healing medicine, with magic medicine, or a fairy that will automatically heal you back 7 hearts when you die. Uh it takes something as simple as a humble bottle and make it seem like such a powerful, incredible item that even to this day, if I get a bottle in a Zelda game, I'm just like, hell yes, it's bottle
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
It's become a weirdly iconic item in Zelda games, and I think that this was the game that sort of like Zelda bottles became what they are.
Right. It's like, don't forget, it's not just healing items too, right? You can stick bees in them and
That's
fight
true,
enemies
yeah.
with it.
But you know
And
what's really cool? The idea I have no memory of this the first time this, but I can imagine what it'd be like that you catch a fairy, you put it in a bottle, you're like, all right, I'll release the fairy and heal myself, and then you forget about the fairy and you're fighting a boss and you die, and you're like, God darn it. And then the fairy pops out and revives you. Like that's gotta be a mind blowing moment the first time it
oh,
happened.
Yeah.
I don't remember if
I
that
know.
happened to me, but some version of that probably did, or at least one of my friends at elementary school told me about it, and my mind was blown. Then, and I immediately went bottle hunting after that. Some version of that for sure happened, but I don't have a specific memory. And oh man, zooming back to the way beginning of this game again, how cool is it that they give you a lantern? Because like there's Zelda art of Zelda 1 and 2 of him like stalking through a dungeon holding up a light or a torch. And there is there are candles in Zelda 1 that are a factor, but just the light effects of this game and how important that lantern is, like even through to the end game. um I don't know. It seems like another. It's like a bottle. It's like this is a simple item. It makes sense that Link would have one, but they've really made it useful and special for being just a humble lantern. Ah, man, this game's good.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
funny
it's so
because
good.
it's almost disappointing at the beginning that you open the first chest and it's like, oh, it's just a light, right? Where's my sword?
Mhm.
But you pretty quickly realize just how important it is, and that it just remains a key part of your inventory for the entire game.
And I mean, it's your first Y button item, and I think that the image of Link, stalking through the castle dungeon with his sword and shield and holding up a lantern is sort of iconic, and escorting Zelda through parts of the dungeon that are often dark and need that lantern. I mean, I'm just saying that lantern light technology has come a long way since Where's Waldo for the NES, which is some pretty heinous lantern levels, let's just say, or more like spotlight levels. But going back to this game, you can do a lot of exploring on your own, fresh out the gate out of that building called Sanctuary, in A Link to the Past. But you're sort of gently nudged towards Kakariko Village. You're looking for a guy named Sahasrara, his wife, or maybe his female roommate. I don't know. Tells you, oh, he's at this temple area to the east of here. And you can encounter him directly. He becomes sort of a guiding voice throughout most of the game. He can contact you telepathically, which is and he's very casual in explaining that to you as well. It's like, oh yeah, I can use telepathy. Don't worry about it. Uh, but then and then he guides, and then he leads you to the Eastern Palace, which is quite close to where he's hiding out. and to obtain the medal of courage there. And sort of the background story of this is that the king's advisor, a sorcerer named Aghanim, has been kidnapping young women who are descendants of the seven sages from the distant past. And Zelda was the seventh of those maidens. And one of the kidnapped maidens was Sahasrahal's daughter. You meet another old man later in this part of the game who mentioned that his granddaughter was kidnapped as well. So the community is definitely affected by the kidnapping of these women. And Link is what's the word I'm looking for? Link is sort of presumed to be on this quest to try and stop the sorcerer Aghanim and rescue Zelda and the other kidnapped maidens. But that sort of figures out more directly in part 2 of the game, which I don't know if we're going to discuss today. But and after Eastern Palace, you can sort of do the next 2 dungeons in any order, but you really need the item in Dungeon 2 to get to Dungeon 3. So they sort of want you to have it be Eastern Palace, Desert Palace, then Hera's Tower. But you probably can manage Hera's Tower before Desert Palace if you take
Power glove.
if you take the Power Glove and but before fighting the boss. So I'm sure that's possible. But what do we think of these first 3 dungeons? Their layouts. Did you have any specific memories or frustrations about them?
So the Tower of Hera in particular is impressive because of the verticality of it and how you fall from floor to floor. Uh, even
It's a
even at the
tower.
very yeah, but how many games at the time were like that? Yeah, it's a real tower, and it's like getting the moon pearl at the top, right, and having to actually fall down to get your item. You know, it feels like, I mean, even now it's like falling in pits is bad in video games. Um, and there you are rewarded for it. I also love the secret at the top of the tower. If you fall in the right hole, you'll just go
Yeah,
all
oh,
the way down
the
to
fairy
go to the
room.
fairies, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like who was the first kid to accidentally figure that out because one of those hard hat beetles knocked him in a in the hole, right? And and you're swearing up and down because now you're falling all the way down the tower, and then you get rewarded for it.
I don't know if this was the first game to do that, but I feel like every year I'm playing video games made that are brand new, where I have to navigate multiple stages of a map. I'm doing it. I'm doing it right now, playing Dragon Age Veilguard. Like I'm in the mini map or in the map screen and looking at the different floors, trying to figure out if this quest icon or this treasure chest is above me or below me or how I can reach it. And I have to sort of think in 3D. It's like, all right, if I can get above this or below this and then look for the ladder or look for the place to jump. That is a video game concept that I explore every single month, let's say. And this is the earliest I know of it happening, where you're going to the map, you're trying to figure out how to fall to this treasure chest. And the verticality of this dungeon and the specific placements of the holes to strategically fall into is it absolutely holds up. And like these dungeons are way less elaborate and epic than most modern Zelda dungeons, but again, like the design of them is so deliberate and so carefully planned that it's unreal to me that this is all from 1991 or earlier.
Yeah, Eastern Palace is I think it's a masterpiece of a tutorial dungeon essentially. That doesn't feel like a tutorial dungeon because it feels like a real dungeon because it is, but like everything in it really sets you up for the rest of the game. From like you enter a room and there's a chest on the other side of the room, but you can't get to that chest yet. Okay, how then you leave and you revisit it later. Or the first, okay, yeah, here's the big treasure chest, and it's really an intriguing way of introducing a lot of mechanics into it. And then Nintendo uh upends, just throws over the table by introducing the Pegasus boots immediately following it. And that just unlocks so many new different mechanics in how you can navigate these dungeons. And then you play with the Pegasus boots a lot in oh damn it, what's the name of the second dungeon?
The Desert Palace.
Desert Palace.
Desert, yeah, Desert Palace. You play with them a lot in Desert Palace, including, just to get in there, you need to knock the book off of the shelf
Right.
using the boots, and also there's a key at one point in that dungeon that you need to knock off. And then all of that leads to, as you said, the tower. And the tower feels, tall in the same way that Eastern and Desert felt large. And similarly, the variety of different kinds of bosses that you face in all three dungeons, from the Armos Knights to it's very they have their each one has its own feel to it. And in the original game in Legend of Zelda, dungeons generally, I think they had a different color in each one, but that was basically it. But each one of these feels like a completely new and different location with its own rules and architecture, and great it's such a great Zelda game. The first half of this game is such a great Zelda game. The second half is also a great Zelda game, but you don't expect that to happen. At least I didn't when I was a kid. I thought this was it.
I think I knew about the second half twist, if you can call it that, before encountering it on my own. Because again, I played this game at friends' houses and talked
Mm.
about it with friends at school. But it's still a very powerful feeling. I think that like those first three dungeons really are like the Eastern Palace is an introduction to Zelda dungeoneering, and you get the bow in it, which is also the first dungeon item from Zelda One. It's like sort of like telling you how dungeons work. And then the Desert Palace is almost an exploration of broadness, how it's mostly one floor, but there's sort of this giant main room and some surrounding rooms, and there's multiple exits and a second detached part of the dungeon, which will come up in later dungeons for sure. Sort of side eyeing Skull Woods here a little bit, which we'll talk about later. And then Hera's Tower is an exploration of sort of the verticality of a Zelda dungeon. It's like the first Eastern Palace teaches you how to navigate a dungeon. Desert Palace teaches you like how dungeons can have different entrances and exits and can be built out and not just up or down. And then Hera is really the exploration of the upness of these dungeons. But it's sort of teaching you a different kind of dungeon each time. And I know which one is my least favorite by far. It's the Desert Palace. That thing's just annoying. If like and
No
I,
one likes the Desert Palace.
I don't think so. Like the most fun thing about the Desert Palace is killing the final boss, which is three sandworms in just 6 hits of an ice rod. If you get the ice rod ahead of time, I think that's when Sahasrara tells you after the Eastern Palace about where the ice rod might be in a certain telepathic panel that you find, or maybe it's someone in a cave telling you.
Oh, he just tells you when you talk to him afterward when he gives you the boots. But yes,
That's
Yeah.
what it
he
is.
tells
Yeah,
you to just go find a cool item on the east side of the lake.
that's it. Yeah, because that cool item will absolutely annihilate the
It's a
boss of the
very,
second dungeon.
very cool
Yeah.
item, as a matter of fact.
Ayo.
I think the coolest thing about the Desert Palace is actually being outside of the Desert Palace. The two coolest things about the Desert Palace, in my mind, are the way you get in by doing the book translation and praying, and then when you leave the dungeon and you go back outside to re-enter the second part of the dungeon from the outside is
Yes.
such a interesting, cool mechanic that at that point it's the first time a Zelda game has ever done that, where it's like, oh, the whole it's not just one it's not just one location, it's two different locations that you need to traverse between. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Right.
just like many real world buildings, this building
Exactly.
has more than one entrance and exit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes it feel like a real place in a way that the other dungeons just don't, because they don't have those multiple entrances, right? It's like the I think all three of these early dungeons you could safely say kind of fit their space in the world, right? They don't feel
Mhm.
like they put a little house and then built a huge palace inside the little house, right?
Mhm.
The Zelda one kind of feels like that sometimes, but it's like, really, that whole dungeon was under that one tree. but
Or
but
that one
here,
bush.
right, but here they all feel like they fit the space, but the Desert Palace especially feels like it fits because of the multiple entrances going on. I was going to say the thing that I actually really like about the Desert Palace also was what Jono alluded to with the Pegasus boots, both to get in and for that key, because just like we talked about the bushes slash trees being obstacles, right? In any other, really, in almost any adventure RPG, etc., up to this point, anything like that, a bookcase, a big torch in the middle of a room, those were just things to walk around, right? They weren't things that you would just run into as fast as you could to make something happen. uh, and that's what you have to do here, right?
Yeah, change the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're affecting the environment and not just targets in the environment. And yeah, the discoverability of being able to lift so many things, even more things once you have the power glove, or crashing into trees. It like the more verbs they give you with items just increases the discoverability of the world. And these are very, very basic video game concepts that the three of us have played between ourselves across hundreds of video games, if not thousands. They just feel so tightly made and so ahead of their time, in for a 1991 game. Like there aren't. I don't think this was the first video game to do many of the things that we're so excited about in this episode. Like I'm sure a real game historian will give me earlier counter examples, but it's all planned, like pulled off quite seamlessly here.
Mm.
And even if there are points of, again, annoyance or frustration, just like any game that has difficulty easier than just clicking to the next dialogue, that it's just such an impressive total package. And I think, and we've hinted that there's a sort of a mid game twist. After you get the 3 pendants from these 3 starting dungeons, you're directed back to Hyrule Castle with a rather ominous looking skull icon on your map. And well, actually, before that, you're directed to the Master Sword, which is, I don't know, feels like an iconic Zelda moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally pulling the sword from the stone is. Is there something like that in Zelda 2? Because I never got to the end of Zelda 2, but like
No,
Link,
no, there's
yeah,
nothing like
okay,
that in
yeah,
Zelda 2.
all right. Linking pulling out the Master Sword feels like a moment that they've recreated or attempted to recreate in almost every Zelda game since. And there's a splash of Arthurian legend. It's an incredible mid-game sort of story reward and gameplay reward, because suddenly things that were dying in 3 hits die in 2, and so on. Like you feel stronger, you feel like you've progressed. There's a lot of drama in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Before you go to Hyrule Castle for that 4th dungeon, Link pulling out the Master Sword really feels special.
It does. It's also another one of those holy crap graphics moments, because after you pull it out and you go back into the what was previously the fog covered forest, now the sun is shining through the leaves and shadows are being cast on the ground, and it's just a graphical layer. But like again, 1992 Super Nintendo, that is, oh my god, this is the most beautiful game that has ever existed. Look at this. There are layers. You can see the sunlight going through the trees. That's incredible.
It's a very small disappointment to me that they do change the music track of Lost Woods after you get the Master Sword,
Yeah.
because they get because that earlier forest track is kind of a bop, and I don't know if there's a way to hear it again in the game. Again, for affecting your environment, affecting gameplay, and as a major story pillar, pulling out the Master Sword's great. But the sort of 4th dungeon of the game, where if you want, you can call like this a half dungeon, and that starting run through the castle a half dungeon. I don't know. I sort of think of Hyrule Castle as one dungeon. Although there's no item that is contingent on getting through the dungeon. It's not a capital D dungeon, but I sort of think of it as the game's, oh, I don't know, if the game's 12th dungeon, if you want to talk about who's the 5th beetle or whatever.
One of my favorite things in this game. I dislike it as a player, but just in terms of the developers trolling the player, there's one room in the climb where there are, I think it's a blue knight, a red knight, and a gold knight with a ball and chain, and it's like, oh my god, these 3 are like 3 of the hardest enemies you've fought up to that point in the game. They're all in the same room, and you have to fight them all, except you don't, because the door's
the
unlocked.
door's
You can literally
open.
just walk. You don't even need to use the Pegasus boots. You can just walk by them and go up the stairs. But if you're not paying attention,
Oh yeah, this is one game where definitely as a kid I had to kill every enemy on
Mhm.
screen and slash down every bush on screen. But now
cut
as
all the grass.
but now, yeah, exactly. But now as an adult, I'm like, there's no experience points in this game. I'm not rupee farming most of the time in this game. I can just walk by things a lot of the time unless there's a door that needs unlocking. And that's an attitude I have now that I definitely did not have 25 years ago or however long when I first played this game.
Right. Yeah, this like I usually I don't know if this is official or not. I call it Upper Hyrule Castle, right?
Mm,
This section it's basically just an enemy gauntlet, right?
Oh yeah.
It's basic. You could also like describe it as just like a DPS check, or like it's just
yeah.
there to make sure you got good before you keep going. And
Yeah,
maybe
the
it's
early Zelda games play a little bit like shmups because it's sort of you're just navigating things on a 2D plane, but you really have to at least have some semblance of positioning and defensive moving around so you don't die all the time. Because I mean, I
yeah,
don't think of this as a super challenging game, but you can die fast if you get a little too greedy. It's like
right.
I mean, I definitely thought this game was harder 30 plus years
Yeah,
ago,
I did
but
for
Oh,
this is
sure.
obviously,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but now like this feels like normal Zelda gameplay, but this is one of the games that sort of established what normal Zelda gameplay is.
Well, this
yeah,
gauntlet is it's cool for a number of reasons, but also I know it's not the end of the game. But looking at it from 1992 perspective, it does have a big final dungeon energy to it. Like because it's so many hard enemies, and like the big boss that you fought in the dungeon, the literal dungeon in Hyrule Castle with the ball and chain. All of a sudden, there are like two of them, and they're golden now. Like it's such a step up to okay, this is the biggest enemy, and now there's so many of them that you need to take out. It's such a final challenge that ends in such a ridiculous level. You fail. You like it's a great game. It's a great storytelling moment where you get to the top and you aren't in time. You can't save the princess. You lose, and that's crazy. And then you're just left hanging there where like he escapes and you're just like left in this room. And you're like, well, now what do I do? She's gone. He's gone. What do I do at this point? I guess I'll just cut these curtains out of frustration.
Well, I mean, you see him disappear behind the curtains. So it does it's not it's maybe cutting them out of determination and not frustration. But it is a cool moment where it looks like the game is over, but
right.
then you chase after Aghanim, you fight the first game of Zelda ping pong in history, which is now which is I mean Josh, you can tell me better than this, which is it's happened many times in games since. Uh
Yeah, this is the first time. Yes.
I don't I think I had a friend tell me how to beat Aghanim at first, or at least I saw him do it first because I remember knowing how to do it but still struggling a little bit the first time I fought him. This is a fingerprint of a memory from probably 27 years ago. Uh but then after that it's like, oh no, the game's not over, the game has just begun. Because I mean, Jono was talking about how this game does really well with like graphical overlays. Maybe the biggest graphical overlay of all is after that Aghanim
Yeah.
boss fight, because the entire map of Hyrule is now twisted into a dark world with 8 new dungeons to explore before you can challenge the final boss. But I don't want to get into the Dark World second part of the game now. We'll save that for episode 445 next week. Are there any final thoughts we want to uh, bring up to cap off part one of A Link to the Past
I
before
was going to
moving
comment on
on?
Aghanim, right?
Oh, please.
As like the boss, right? I did not know how to do that.
Mm.
And actually, almost kind of like embarrassingly, for quite a few years, I really didn't know the way to do it. Because this I do very distinctly remember. My cousin and I were playing, and just could not figure it out. Just out of frustration, could not figure it out. We tried everything, and accidentally discovered that the bug net works as the
Oh,
first instance of them doing the joke. Like in Ocarina of Time and a lot of the other games, it's a bottle. Sometimes it's a fishing rod you can
oh,
do stuff with, right?
there's
Yeah,
there's some minor harmless item that can be used to
they can like
defeat Ganon.
distract.
Sure.
Yeah, and this is the first instance of that, right? And we did it accidentally, like where we just happened to hit Aghanim the moment he shot a fireball, and it just looked like we hit him with the bug net, and that we won, and so it took us several more minutes to realize we had actually reflected it. But I did not realize that the sword worked until long after Ocarina of Time came out, where I went back to the game and just, I don't know, it was years after I'd played Ocarina of Time where I was like, well, hold on, maybe I don't have to use the bug net for this anymore.
I don't remember if I saw a friend do it or if I failed and then a friend told me how to do it. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I do remember like having some advanced knowledge to beat Aghanim. The Zelda thing that plagued me for years. I think I've told the story on podcasts before. Um, I played Link's Awakening before A Link to the Past. My first Zelda game was Zelda 1. My first uh and then my favorite Game Boy game for a long time, maybe still is Link's Awakening. But this was the first Zelda game I finished because it wasn't until after I beat Link to the Past and I talked to a different friend, my friend who I still talk to this day, Diane. Uh, I could not get through Eagle's Tower of Link's Awakening until I was at least 11 or 12 years old. The game had been out by a few years by this point. I had already beaten A Link to the Past, but then by talking to Diane and even looking at maps that she had drawn, I figured out how to navigate the verticality of Eagle's Tower. And now I realize that Eagle's Tower is just a much more frustrating version of the verticality introduced in Hera's Tower. So yeah, I didn't have that moment of frustration with Aghanim, but I know the struggle of a Zelda dungeon holding you off for months, maybe even years. I think it was over a year because I played Link's Awakening. I got stuck at Eagle's Tower. Then I got my Super Nintendo and played A Link to the Past. It's whatever. Everyone's Zelda journey is different, and
Yeah.
but this was the first Zelda journey I finished because I think I said earlier I didn't beat Zelda 1 until a couple of years ago. Uh, but yeah, I mean, this is a special video game. Jono, do you have any sort of part one moments that we want to talk about before we sign off?
Uh, one thing about Aghanim, which is that this was another, I think Legend of Zelda Link to the Past is full of them for 1992, but another oh my god graphics moment is the lightning bolt that he fires. I remember that being featured in commercials advertising the Super Nintendo at the time because it was such a mind blowing special effect that he has this massive lightning bolt that he can fire. That's seriously not an effect that could ever have happened on the Nintendo system, certainly. Maybe it could, but it wasn't. So I remember there being a oh my god graphics moment there. Um, we didn't mention finding the flippers. Uh, at this point, we can. I think you can find. You can find. You have to find the flippers at this point, don't you?
I
You don't
I'm not
have
sure you
to.
have to.
You don't have to, but you
Yeah,
can.
you
Yeah,
can for
yes.
sure.
You need the flippers for a couple dungeons in part two.
Yeah.
But you in part one, once you have the power glove, you can go to the extreme northeast of the map. Go sort of navigate a swampland full of Zora and talk to the big Zora at the end and buy the flippers for 300 rupees. There's a lot of ways to find 50s and hundreds of rupees in chests by this point. So I remember this time I was able to afford them easily, but I'm sure someone who's a little bit cash poor at this point of the game might have had an unpleasant surprise at the price of rupee of the flippers.
You can explore almost the entirety of the map in the first part of the game. The only I think you can't explore Eastern Death Mountain. That's it. But the rest of the
Yep.
map is wide open as long as you have everything, and that's a huge amount. That's a huge open world for the Super Nintendo era, especially the like first year of the Super Nintendo era. This game is so masterful at putting out things, showing you things, and you can't get it yet, and just teasing you and like, how do I get that? Like the ledge behind the lumberjack's house, and it's like, well, how the hell do I get that thing? I think it's his heart, and it's not until the second part of the game where you have you can run into the dead tree and
The lumberjacks are cutting this tree, and one of them remarks that it feels weird as they're cutting it. But then after you get the Master Sword, you talk to them, and they'll say, "Oh, great, we can finally go back into the woods and cut trees there now instead." And so in part two of the game, if you go back to their house, they're no longer blocking the tree. You can Pegasus boots charge it, crawl into the hole inside the tree, and then get that heart. They do a really good carrot on stick showing things just out of reach, and then once you have the right item or get through a part of the plot, being able to reinterpret that. Like video games do that maybe most nakedly in like a Metroidvania style game, or like, you know, in Guacamelee there's even different colored blocks that you need specific skills to break through.
Mm.
But you see progress gating like that all the time now, and to a degree it was also true in Zelda 1 and in Metroid, which is, you know, half of the Metroidvania moniker. But this game just does a really brilliant job of doing it. It makes finding that a new item that means maybe you can get something from earlier in the game that you noticed even a more powerful feeling.
Mhm. I also find it interesting to look at. I mean, up to this point, there were only two Zelda games. There was The Legend of Zelda, and there was Adventures of Link. And we tend to think of Adventures of Link as an evolutionary dead end in the Zelda franchise, because in many ways it is. It's side-scrolling. It's much more action adventure. There's a Dragon Quest style overworld, but something that they actually carried through from Adventures of Link is the story. Like if you had to pick something that was carried on, it's the fact that Adventures of Link has a story, it has characters, it has villages that you can visit, and that DNA is carried on through to Link to the Past, and certainly all of the games in the future. Where Kakariko Village, there was nothing like that in the first game. So I don't think that Adventures of Link was quite the evolutionary dead end that many people consider it to
It's
be.
not a dead end.
Yeah.
Adventure of Link does a lot of things that were super important for Zelda, not the least of which is doing an aerial down stab that became a staple of of Link in the Super Smash Brothers games. But it was so different from what the first game was. I would say the side-scrolling gameplay was really not what fans were excited about, because there was frankly many better side-scrolling action games on the NES. But like if anything, A Link to the Past like has so many gameplay improvements and changes, but feels more like Zelda 1 than Zelda 2
Mhm.
from a basic gameplay level. That I mean, I can only imagine if I was, say, older than 5 years old in 1991, 92, when this game came out, how excited I would have been for the evolution of Zelda. But now, even experiencing it many years later, and after I've played this game several times over the past 30 years, I mean, I don't know, like just about everything in this game holds up, even if the textures of these polygons make Link's hair look a little pink.
Oh
Mhm.
no, his hair's a lot pink.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
He has pink hair. It's just canonically.
it's supposed to be a light brown, I think, but it is absolutely
It's
pink. The pixels on screen are pink.
I guess I have two little historical stories here. So if you go back to early Japanese manga, there were a lot of depictions of Link with pink hair. Um, and that I believe even predates A Link to the Past. Like artists were just drawing him that way. Can't tell you why. So the pink hair may have actually been inspired by outside media, um, at least to some extent. But maybe that's just a Japanese thing. You know, there's also just the talk of, well, the SNES has a limited color palette. They couldn't fit something because something yellowish brown was already on the screen and it would have messed up everything. But no one really knows for sure, right? But if you go look up old manga wow, I called them scans, manga scans, um, from just Japanese manga, like History of Hyrule is the site that keeps track of a lot of that. There is a lot of pink-haired Link, a lot of it.
Interesting.
Well, they gave us a truly canon pink-haired Link for this game's sequel over 20 years later, where we give it a Link with some bright
Yeah,
magenta
yeah.
hair. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
Um,
I was going to add on the Zelda 2 topic. It's not a Zelda 2 podcast, or I'd talk about it for another hour. But
we're not having a Zelda 2 podcast.
I love Zelda 2, right? It's actually one of my favorites. Um, it influences a lot more than people realize. The story and the
Mhm.
towns are a big part.
It
The
influenced me
sword
to stop
skills.
playing Zelda 2 very quickly.
See, and for me, I fell in love with it as an adult. I first beat it 10 years ago. So, like, I was in my 20s already when I was finally just like, fine, I need to beat this. It's the only Zelda game I've never beaten. And I walked away wanting to play it again immediately. Um,
I would
And
love them to
so,
take another stab at it. I
so
would love that.
I walked away from it in the early '90s and then remained away from it. I feel like that's the Zelda game that probably needs to be remade the most, because maybe
oh,
they'll turn it into a good video game.
I would love
But
them to just
oh,
take a look at that and just
see,
be like, all right, we're just going to make this, we're going to use Metroidvania mechanics and we're going to keep the side scrolling, and it'd be awesome.
they need to sheeze all that game to make it look good for a modern audience, because I am unwilling to go back to that one, unlike how I was very willing to try Zelda 1 a couple of years ago to cross it off the list. But
so
okay,
yeah, lots
at
of
the risk of
discussion could be had. I was going to say
but we are
lots of
not having
sword.
it today.
I understand. Lots of the sword skills that like really weren't fully realized till like the 3D games. That's all very heavily inspired by Zelda 2 because they wanted Link to be able to like duel enemies,
Hmm.
which you can kind of do in Zelda 2. Um, and so some of it's not fully realized until after A Link to the Past. A Link to the Past fully realizes magic spells and the villages in the storyline. But Zelda 2, I do think, is a core piece of the foundation of Zelda, along with the original game, that kind of eventually leads to Ocarina of Time. Um, so I was going to say, as my historical piece, uh, go look at reviews for Zelda 2 back in the day, because people are not nearly as harsh on it as we tend to be nowadays. It was
Well,
actually
playing it as a
very well
child, I hated
received.
it.
Yeah.
Playing it as a teenager, I still hated it. And while I will agree that it is influential and important for what Zelda became, just like Final Fantasy 2 and Mega Man 1, those are important steps I never want to play again.
On Random Encounter last week, we were talking about, Zach and I were talking about first sequels and how, especially in the NES era, the idea of there being a formula that you advance really hadn't taken place. Like they were like, all right, we're doing a sequel to this game. So do we want to advance the gameplay and that we came up with in the first game and make it better? But no, most people were like, no, we want to do something completely new. We're bored with that. We want to do something different. We're just going to take the characters and the setting and we're going to do something completely different with it. And they did, and a lot of times that ended in utter failure in terms of sales. And then they would course correct on the third title, except of course for Mega Man. Mega Man is the exception.
Yeah.
Mega Man course corrected on the second game, and then the sixth game feels a whole lot like the second game. In fact, the 11th game feels a whole lot from 2018 feels a whole lot like the second game.
Yeah, the second Mega Man really fixed it.
If we're talking about the second and 11th Mega Man games on a Link to the Past podcast, now we're definitely done with the episode. Thank you so much, JL and JL, Jono and Josh, for joining me on this podcast. You're immediately my favorite JLs after John Bradshaw Layfield. That's a professional wrestler for those who don't know. And we're gonna come back and reunite the JLs and the MS for A Link to the Past Part 2 next week. I'm in this. I'm trying to figure out which dungeon to do next in Part 2. I've done one of the Part 2 dungeons, and I'm sort of just exploring the world with a shiny hammer in my hands. So that's where I'm at right now. I'll be able to take care of it in a week. I'm not worried about that. But and also thank you listeners for putting up with my still salty about Zelda 2 ass for this entire episode. However, that part 2 coming next week will be the end of Zelda month here at Retro Encounter. In December, we do have it all planned out, but we don't have any of it recorded yet. I suspect that the game Zach and Jono talked about on that podcast was Dragon Quest 3, which got a remake in just a day or two from when we're recording here. but in the past, from when you're listening to this, A Link to the Past in the future. So we're doing 2 episodes on Dragon Quest 3 in December, and also a spoiler cast about Metaphor Fantasio, one of the biggest RPG releases of 2024. I finished it a little while ago. It's awesome. I knew immediately I wanted to podcast about it. So we're gonna have a Metaphor Fantasio spoiler cast and 2 episodes on Dragon Quest 3 coming in December. And also, this is episode 444. That's alarmingly close to 450. I think 450 should land in early January. So after those Dragon Quest episodes, we're gonna have a year in review episode, and then episode 450, all in quick succession. But if you want to email us and ask us about Metaphor, Dragon Quest, or Zelda, for any Zelda other than Zelda 2, the best way to reach us is to email retro@rpgfan.com. You can also follow RPG Fan on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Discord always is either RPG Fan or RPG Fancom, and Blue Sky as well. Huh, I don't have Blue Sky on this list. We just started posting on Blue Sky more often, so that's another great way to reach out to us. And also, if you just go to the website rpgfan.com, there's reviews, features, podcasts, and news articles and more there every single day of the week. And speaking of podcasts, there are also 2 other fine podcasts here on the RPG Fan Podcast Network. There's Random Encounter every other Monday, hosted by you, Jono.
Yeah, last week was a little bit late because the embargoes for Dragon Quest III, and I made the choice. Well, you know what? I'd rather the episode be posted late than have to wait 2 weeks to talk about Dragon Quest III. So yeah, that went up on Friday. So yeah, it was a fun episode. We talked about Dragon Quest III. We talked about the Lego Horizon game, which is still one of the weirdest things to exist in the last few years for me. It's like, what? That's really strange.
It's still weird to me that the canonical 4th episode of the Portal series is the Lego Portal.
I know, and it's like to the point where Jonathan Colton wrote a song.
The 3rd Portal song is in that weird Lego Toys to Life game that they made.
Mm-hmm. Which also puts Batman in continuity in the Portal universe.
Man, Legos are weird, but kids have it good. Whenever I go buy the Legos at Target or Walmart or something, I'm so impressed with the range of Legos kids have nowadays. My friends' kids have it pretty good with Legos. But this is not a Lego podcast. This is an RPG Fan podcast, and the 3rd RPG Fan podcast is Rhythm Encounter every other Monday about RPG music, usually hosted by Mike Salvato and or Hillary Andreth. You can review Retro Encounter, Random Encounter, or Rhythm Encounters on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or however you choose to listen to podcasts. We love feedback. Our favorite feedback is if you give us money. The best way to do that is to visit rpgfan.com/shop, where you can find 2 storefronts, one hosted by TeePublic, where you can get RPG Fan apparel and accessories, and another hosted by Hyperplay RPG, where you can get the 300-page RPG Fan reviews collection, which has many single-page versions of RPG Fan reviews collated from over the years. But if you want to give us feedback as individuals and as a podcast, which I've said many times, it never doesn't feel weird. I wish I had a better way of saying that. How can you find us on the internet via social media? Let's start with you, Jono.
Sure. You can find me on just my email address, jlogan@rpgfan.com. If you have something for Random Encounter, you can find it at podcast@rpgfan.com. And that's it at the moment. I'm thinking about checking out Blue Sky because it's having a moment for reasons.
Blue Sky's all right. I'm proudly one of the first 500,000 users. I've been on that thing for a bit over a year, but Blue Sky's all right. Blue Sky's all right. It feels like old Twitter.
I have an account. I just have never used it before, so I guess we'll see.
But Joshua, how can listeners find you on Blue Sky or email or otherwise?
Yeah, so I am Watcher Joshua on Threads, and I rejoined Blue Sky due to peer pressure last night. so I am on both, where I just talk about whatever games I'm playing, and where we welcome all Zelda games, even the CDI ones.
The CDI ones came up on an episode of Retro Encounter 2 weeks ago, and I'm still in disbelief that it did. But I didn't disallow it from the fantasy draft episode, so that's how that happened. But listeners, if you want to find me on the internet, it's not that hard. I am on Blue Sky, Instagram, and RPG Fans Discord. All 3 of those places I'm called @Evoker for Dogs. But let's see, we did it. We podcasted about A Link to the Past. This is maybe one of the more surprisingly late episodes of this podcast. Like, I mean, we've done Zelda episodes, but like is it surprising or not surprising that it took us this long to get to this specific one? I don't know.
First podcast I ever did with RPG Fan was with you doing the Link's Awakening Revisited episode.
That's right. That would have been in 2018 when I replayed this game and several others for podcasts. I think, wow, the last time I was playing A Link to the Past was the first time I was podcasting with John O. Logan. And that's special. Listeners, thank you. Good night and good luck.